Once the Citrix window is finished, the window will disappear. In this module, we'll cover how a funeral director will create a death record in which the funeral director, a certifying physician, and the local registrar are all registered users of the IVRS. This is the most ideal scenario for creating a death record, as the electronic process will not be interrupted by a certifier who is not using the advantages of this automated process. Once you've logged into the IVRS, you should see the home screen or landing page like the one on screen now. Prior to creating a new death record, the individual from your funeral home who is meeting with the informant should fill out a blank death worksheet thoroughly during this meeting. To print a blank worksheet, simply click on Blank Forms from the menu bar and a drop-down menu appears. Click on the last item in the list labeled Blank DIL Worksheet. A preview window of the worksheet will appear. Click the print icon in the top left corner of the window to send the worksheet to your printer. When you pick the form off your printer, you can close out the preview window and then begin collecting the decedent's information with the informant. When you're ready to begin data entry, you will access the home screen again, and this time click on File, New, Death to open a blank death record. Before beginning a record, you should be aware that this software was designed to flow in sync with the VR200 death worksheet. A death record in the IVRS is broken out by several different information categories, which are separated by the tabs at the top of this record. For example, the Decedent tab involves items 1 through 7C on the death worksheet. The Decedent History tab continues on with items 8 through 16C, and so on. The software is designed to move from field to field in the same order that you should be filling out the death worksheet. So it's important to enter in all data into each field in tab order without skipping any fields. Also, when initially creating a record, you should not need to click on the tabs at the top, because the software will move to each tab automatically as you enter the appropriate information into the last field on each tab. Throughout this record, you will primarily use the tab key on your keyboard to advance to the next field in order. Also, if you do skip over a required field, you will receive an error alert pop-up window calling your attention to the missed field and asking you to return to the field to enter data before moving on to the next one. So now we're going to quickly walk through completing this record, and we'll highlight some key fields and how to properly fill them out, as well as highlight some shortcuts you may use to speed up data entry. The first tab in the record
is the Decedent tab. This is where you will enter in the name, age, gender, date of death, and place of death information. As you can see, the first field is one of the few fields which is not on the death worksheet. It's labeled paper or electronic filing. When a funeral director, certifier, and local registrar are all online and registered users of the IVRS, then you will always type in E for electronic filing here. To continue to the next field, you'll use the tab key on your keyboard. Now begin typing in the first, middle, last name, and suffix, if any, for the decedent into the appropriate text boxes and tab to the alias box. For this record, I'm going to enter an N for no. However, later in this tutorial, there will be a separate training module dedicated to establishing an alias for a decedent. Next, you'll enter in the gender of the decedent. The acceptable fields here are M for male, F for female, or U for unknown. The next field asks us if the date of death is known. An N for no in this box will add the word found to the decedent found field. Because our record's date of death is known, we'll enter a Y in this box and enter in the date of death. If you are creating a death record on the same date as the date of death, you may enter a T in this field, and today's date will automatically populate for you. If the dates aren't the same, then simply type in the date of death using numbers only. Now enter in the decedent's date of birth again, using numbers only. If the birthday is unknown, you may enter nines all the way through. Once the date of birth is entered, the next two fields, the age and age units, will auto-populate. The age unit field will allow you to select unknown if necessary. For our sample record,
We will simply tab past the fields, not changing anything. Notice now, when you tab past these fields, the 4 fields directly below gray out. These fields only apply to infants who die before 1 year of age. Before we move forward with the remainder of this record, let's take a step back and look at an example of entering data into these fields. If one of your decedents died on the same day the child was born, you will need to enter in the exact age in hours and minutes. So you will first enter in the date of death and then the date of birth. Now again, the age units field auto-populates to reflect hours, but you will have to enter how many hours the child survived. When you tab to the next fields, you'll see these 4 fields below are no longer gray. They now remain open for entry. So you will tab past the months and days field and then enter in the correct hours and minutes of the infant's life. This is how you will complete these entries when necessary. Also, please remember the 2 fields on the left are used to identify whether or not the child lived more than 1 day but less than 1 year, and the 2 fields on the right are only used if the child lived less than 24 hours. Okay, so now that we have that covered, let's continue on to the place of death section. Because this software is used for deaths which occurred in Illinois, the first field defaults to Illinois and is unchangeable. So you'll automatically move to the county field. This is a drop-down field. Now throughout the application, you may complete drop-down fields in 2 ways. You may click on the down arrow to the right of the field, and using the scroll bar, you may move up and down the list until you click on an item in the list to select it. Or, once the field is highlighted, you can type the information on your keyboard until it displays in the field, and you tab to the next field. For example, I'm going to select Jefferson County, and so you can see what is happening, I will also click on the drop-down list. When I type a J, the list automatically moves down the alphabetical list to Jackson County. If I were to type a JE, then Jefferson County becomes highlighted. So as I move through the rest of this record, I will be typing most of the drop-down fields to save time. Now in the city field, I'm typing an MT and tabbing on, which selects Mount Vernon for me. This field is the actual place where the death occurred, be it a hospital, the decedent's home, or a public place, such as a street intersection. If you choose dead on arrival, emergency room, hospital facility, inpatient, or nursing home, it is very likely that the facility is already in the database, and the address will auto-populate for you. For example, let's say quickly that the subject was dead on arrival. The facility name dropdown will show you a list of the nearby hospitals in either Jefferson County or the city of Mount Vernon. If I select a hospital from the list, the remaining address fields are filled in for me. However, if for some reason the facility name is not in the list, you should choose Other from the drop-down list and manually enter in the remaining fields. In another example, if Mr. Doe's body was found in an alley, in the place of death field, you will select Other and then manually enter in the closest description of the place of death. Here you will type in alley. The facility name will then automatically gray out, and you're moved to the address field, where you'll type in the closest description of an address. For example, you might enter the alley between 290 and 310 Central Avenue, and then tab past the apartment number to enter the zip code. The zip code field has isolated all of the zip codes within Mount Vernon to help you easily select the correct zip code from the drop-down list. Now let's take another step back so we can enter in our example's information. Mr. Doe died at home. When you select decedent's home, you will also need to manually enter in the address information. Remember, when manually entering in addresses into the IVRS, please try to be as accurate as possible, as this information will print on the official death certificate. Also, the IVRS uses geocoding software to cross-check the address that you've entered into the IVRS against actual addresses that have been verified to be valid by the geocoding service. When you enter an address into the IVRS that cannot be found in the geodatabase, an alert window will appear like this one. Please check your entry for place of death street. The entry could not be matched to an acceptable street name, and then it asks, go back to street. Before selecting your answer, you should double-check the entry for accuracy. If you have made a mistake, click Yes to correct the entry. Keep in mind that geocoding often will not recognize addresses such as rural routes. So just because you receive this alert does not always mean that you've entered in an address incorrectly. If you are certain that you've entered the address properly, click No to override the error and continue on to the Decedent History tab.
This is where you will enter marital, military, and residence information.
Using the drop-down menu, select the country of birth. The software defaults to the United States, but you may select another country if applicable. Please note, you may also select Unknown or Other if necessary. If Other is chosen, you must enter in the name of the country manually. Next, select the state and city of birth, again noting that Other and Unknown are an option if necessary. The next field is the Social Security number. The number you enter here will be cross-referenced to the Social Security Administration databank, so please be sure to carefully enter in the accurate number. If for any reason you did not know the correct Social Security number, please enter all 9s in this field. If you obtain the correct Social Security number later, you may go back into the record and update the information prior to the local registrar registering the record. Updating a record will be covered in a separate training module later in this training. The next section is marital data. You may use the drop-down list to select the marital status of the decedent and then complete the first, middle, and last name of the decedent's spouse. Note these fields will be grayed out if the choice is widowed, divorced, never married, or unknown. If married or married but separated are chosen, remember to enter the maiden name of a female spouse, not the married last name. If you mistakenly enter the same last name as the decedent, you will receive an alert window asking you to correct the entry. Next, enter a Y for yes or an N for no if the decedent served any length of time in the U.S. Armed Forces. Then enter the decedent's residential address, using the drop-down menus beginning with country, then state, then county, and the city. Finally, enter the address and zip code. Next, answer a Y for yes or an N for no if the residence is within city limits. Remember, all throughout the IVRS, each address will be checked against geocoding databanks. If the address is confirmed, you will continue on as normal. If the address can't be confirmed, then you will receive an alert window requiring your interaction. Now tab to the Parents section and enter the decedent's father's full name. Here, the IVRS does not require middle names. Please use them if you have them, but you will not get an error message if you skip these fields. However, if the decedent is a male and for some reason has a different last name than his father, the system will show you an error message like this one. This error may be overridden if the names are in fact not the same. If the error is the result of a typo, this is a nice failsafe to help you catch it quickly. Next, you'll enter the decedent's mother's full name using the mother's maiden name. The next section is the informant section. This is the name of the individual who has helped provide the data regarding the decedent on the death worksheet. Please type in their name and using the drop-down menu, enter the informant's relationship to the deceased. Here you will use legal names, not maiden names, so if a mother or spouse is the informant, they may have the same legal last name as the decedent here. Please note, you may also select Other if one of the available choices doesn't best describe the informant. Should you choose Other, the field to the right will become active, where you can enter in the title of the informant. Next, enter the informant's address. Once the zip code is entered, you'll be taken to the Disposition tab. Disposition tab.
Using the drop-down menus, enter the type of disposition. Your choice in this field will directly determine the type of permits which will be provided once the record is registered. Please be very careful to select the accurate disposition. Also, your selection here could determine who's involved in the registration process. For example, a decedent who dies of natural causes and who will be buried will involve the funeral director, the physician, and the local registrar
to process the record. However, if the decedent's family chooses cremation, then an extra step is automatically added to the process to allow the coroner to grant permission to cremate the body after the physician certifies the cause of death. Since our decedent will be cremated, we'll cover the additional steps in the next module titled Work Queues. Continuing on with the record, next you'll enter the name of the cemetery, crematory, or other location. Most of the cemeteries or crematories in your area should appear in the list. When you select a location from the drop-down menu, the address will automatically populate for you. If the disposition location is not in the list, you will select Other in the drop-down list and manually enter in the name and address information for the disposition location. Now we'll continue on to the disposition date, where you will type in the correct information using 8 numbers only. The next section is your funeral home. In most scenarios, this will be auto-populated and filled out for you. However, if you are a funeral director for several funeral homes, you may need to select which location will be handling this particular decedent. All fields are completed on the
Disposition tab. You will move to the Certifier tab. Under Certifier type, you will select Medical Examiner or Coroner if the decedent died from an accident, homicide, suicide, or unknown. If the decedent died from natural causes, with no suspicious circumstances, you will select either the physician in charge, or if the decedent died under the supervision of a physician, you will select physician in attendance. Next, select the correct certifier's name from the drop-down list. Once a name is selected, the certifier's license number and address will auto-populate. However, if the certifier's name is not in the list, then they are not online and using the IVRS. This means this record must be a paper filing. This process will be covered in detail later in the modules titled Fax Attestation and Drop to Paper. For now, we will choose our doctor, Harry Hamilton, from the drop-down list and see his information autofill in the next few fields. Notice these fields are all grayed out, as you are not authorized to alter these fields in any way. So next, you'll move down to the time of death. If you know the information, you may enter it here. The certifier will still be able to correct this entry if you make a mistake. If you do not know the information, please leave it blank. For our record, we'll enter in 6:30 p.m. Please note in the drop-down field, there is a separate selection for noon and midnight, as well as the ability to select unknown when necessary. Next, you'll type a Y or an N in the Was Medical Examiner or Coroner Contacted box. After answering this question, you will notice the software has moved us past the Cause of Death tab, because all information on the Cause of Death tab will be completed by the certifier. Now on the Demographics tab,
enter in the decedent's level of education. If you do not know this information, you may select Unknown in this field. Next, enter a Y for yes, N for no, or U for unknown into the Hispanic ethnicity field. If no is chosen, the software will automatically enter an N into the next 4 fields. If a yes is chosen, you will specify the Hispanic origin of the decedent on the right-hand side, and then tab to the race questions. If you select Other, you will put a Y in the Other box and type the name of the Hispanic origin. Under Race, please click all checkboxes that apply with your mouse. You may select more than one race if multiple races are appropriate. Hispanic is not a race, it is an ethnicity, so you must also choose whether or not the decedent was white or black African American or another applicable race if the decedent is Hispanic. In addition, on the right-hand side, please note if the decedent is an American Indian, Asian, Pacific Islander, or another race, you must select the appropriate box and then enter in a name identifying the tribe or description of the race. If race is unknown, you may select the Unknown box in the bottom right of this section. If you select Unknown here, you will receive an alert window asking you to answer an additional question. Why is the race unknown? You will click on the Missing Variables drop-down list to identify why you entered unknown. Next, complete the Occupation section. In these fields, you will manually type in the occupation and industry, being careful not to misspell, and noting that you may not leave the field blank or enter the word retired. You may, however, type unknown. Pressing Tab from the Industry field will take you to the Complete tab.
Complete tab. This is
where you will have an opportunity to complete the record, which forwards it to the certifier so they may enter in the cause of death.
The first section is titled Funeral Home Printing. This is a feature which is only available to select funeral homes which have been granted the appropriate permissions by their local registrar. Many local registrars may not allow funeral homes to print death certificates. So in this tutorial, we're going to enter an N for no in the Print Certificates at Funeral Home field. If in fact you've been granted permission, you may enter a Y for yes and list the number of copies you'll be printing. Please do not enter a Y in this field if you haven't been approved by your local registrar and provided with special paper, as these requests must be approved by the local registrar for each record, and choosing yes is likely to get this record rejected by the registrar, delaying its registration. The next field is the Funeral Director field. You should use the drop-down menu to select the funeral director's name who will be signing off on this death certificate. At this point, we're going to pause the entries, and it's important to verify the accuracy of all entries thus far with the informant. To do this, you should print a preliminary copy of the death worksheet, which will display all of your entries. Once printed, you can sit down with the informant and review each data point on the form. To print the worksheet, you will have to first save the record. There are two different ways to save a record, and they are very different in what they do. It is critical that you do not confuse them. At the top of the record, you will see a blue disk Save icon. This button will save the record and automatically forward it to the next person in the process, such as the certifier or the registrar. If you are not ready to forward the record to anyone, you should not use this icon to save. To save a record without forwarding it, you should perform a save called Save Without Edits. To do this, click on File on the menu bar and select Save Without Edits. This will save your record without forwarding it to any other IVRS user's work queue. Also, you should remember that to use this save feature, you must have fully completed at least the Decedent tab in this record. Once the first Decedent tab is complete, you can save an incomplete record anytime by using this Save Without Edits option without receiving incomplete field error messages. If you were to save an incomplete record using the blue disk Save icon, the software will run its editing script, and you will likely receive multiple error messages. So always remember, complete records are saved with the blue disk Save icon, and incomplete records, which are not ready to be forwarded to a medical certifier or the local registrar, should always be saved using the Save Without Edits option in the File menu. Also, when you close a record after saving it in this way, you're able to use the search feature to find the record later. Searching will be discussed in a separate module later in this training course. Now that the record is saved, you are ready to print the preliminary worksheet to review with the informant. Click on Requests on the menu bar at the top of the screen, and then select Print DIL Worksheet. This will open a preview image of the completed death worksheet, like the one you see on screen now. You may maximize the screen to allow you to review the form from your computer. When you are ready to print the document, you will click the print icon in the top left corner of the window to send the form to your printer. Next, you will grab the worksheet from the printer and review it with your informant. If your informant points out a mistake, you will click directly on any one of the tabs near the top of the window to move to the specific field in question. To correct a field, you will simply click in the field and then type over the prior data. When all information has been updated and verified to be correct, you are ready to complete the record and perform the other type of save for the record. To take this step, click on the Complete tab and now mark the record complete by typing a Y in the Complete field. Now, it is critical that you do not enter a Y in the Signed field at this point. This step should only be completed after the cause of death has been entered by the certifier and you have had a chance to review all information for accuracy. Once you enter a Y in the Sign field, you will not be able to make any changes to the record. So please type an N in the Sign field. Now you are ready to forward the record to the certifier. So move your mouse to the blue diskette Save icon just below the menu bar and click once.
You should notice at the bottom of the record the words Update Complete. Once you see this confirmation, you may close the record. Now that the record has been saved as complete, the death record will immediately be available in the certifier's work queue. Once they have completed their portion of the record, it will reappear directly in one of your IVRS work queues. Once the funeral director can determine that all fields, including the cause of death information, is complete, they can then sign the record and forward it to the local registrar for processing. This will be covered in more detail in the work queue training in the next module. Now that we've successfully created and routed a new electronic death record, next we will cover how to continue to manage this record by using your IVRS work queue.